Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and the crisis has been averted. The D's are back on the winners list, and our hopes for season 2019 have been rekindled. Tonight, I'm joined once again by my co-host, Grapevine, who comes back from a successful trip from Sydney with the 4 points in hand. Good evening, Grapevine.
Good evening, Andy. Yep, good to be back on the winning road and back on the bandwagon again.
You realise you probably, with our superstitious behaviour here at the Demonland podcast, you might have to stay in Sydney to keep up this winning run.
I'm not a fan of Sydney, and it was a strange atmosphere at the game the other night, but I'm prepared to do the 1%ers if that's what it's going to take.
All right. Also joining us again, blogger, author, Twitter pundit, Adam 1.0, otherwise known as Supermercado on demonland.com. Good evening.
Good evening, and I'm going to deviate from your comments slightly and say the crisis has been temporarily averted.
Okay, yes.
I'm always waiting for the next one to scream from around the corner at 100 miles an hour.
Well, next week, I'm sure if we do have a loss, we'll be back to slashing wrists. But it's all positive this week. And wasn't it nice playing on a Thursday night, banking the win early? And I had a lovely weekend. What about you guys, Grapevine? How was the weekend banking a win early?
Well, it was great for me. I was actually further up north around Noosa Heads over the weekend celebrating my sister's 40th birthday. So it was sunshine and smiles as far as I was concerned. So, yep, happy days.
Supermercado, how was your weekend in soaking up a win? Because we don't get many Friday night, let alone a Thursday night, and to get a win early on, it sort of really shapes the weekend, makes it a really enjoyable time.
Oh, one thing I haven't looked up is how many Thursday games have actually played, because I can't really remember one other one off the top of my head. It may be one of the ANZAC Day Eve games. I know there was one of those on a Friday, so I'm guessing potentially the year before that was on a Thursday. But it was good. It was good to put the feet up and just to start watching the other games with an eye to a version of the Bradbury plan where we can work out whose results are going to be good for us at the end of the year. I got into that after the first win, so I think you don't want to go premature. I'm not putting a plan together yet, but I'm thinking GWS, I'm thinking West Coast, certainly. They're the teams that can be used. We know they're going to make the finals, so they can be used to take out a few of the people we'll be contending against in the middle of the table to set us up for a run at the finals.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it in that way. It seemed because of our sort of slow start, and we can get it back on track to the point where we won't need a Bradbury plan, but we may very well need one. So, yeah, I was sort of keeping an eye on which teams, and because it's such an even year this year, it's some results are going to help us, definitely.
And I think that's probably the only thing that, should we win this week, should we lose this week, we're back in it up to our necks. But should we win this week, we are conversely back in it up to our necks in a better way. Is that the middle of the table is just going to be about a 12-team battle royale for, 3rd to 15th or something. It's just going to be so even in the middle of the table that we could either get lucky in and win less games than we did last year and still make the finals, or we could get extremely unlucky where we get tipped out by, 0.01% again. So I guess the first thing to do is win the games early in the season now that we've got back on track. Although I must say I was reaching for the poison halfway through the second quarter. So to get this win this week that we should win, and I'm less confident than the last time we played St Kilda, and we know what happened then. But to get these wins and get back on track now, and at least if we can get back to 3-3, for instance, we will be right back in it.
Yeah, I'm still holding out hope that we'll make top 4. I haven't ruled that out yet, but we've got to win. I think the next 3 weeks extremely important.
I think we've got to win about the next 15 weeks.
Yeah, well, that's true, but I'm taking it 3 weeks at a time at the moment. So, yeah, the next 3 weeks, the Richmond one certainly seems gettable, given that they're not knocking down playing like a team possessed. So Anyway, but let's talk about our game. Before we start that, though, if you would like to join our program tonight to discuss anything that we do talk about, give us a call, 0390163666, or Skype us at DMilan31. We are looking to hear from Bin Man, because it seems every time we get Bin Man on the phone, we do have a win, with the exception of the Grapevine. You brought it up today, with the exception of the preliminary final. But did he call in before that?
He did.
I was hoping he didn't.
And D. Zephyr raised a good point in the podcast thread as to whether, given that we've got a short week coming up, whether we rest Bin Man. He hasn't had a lot of airtime this year. We don't want him running out of puff early in the call, or, getting a croaky voice. So could be a gamble if we get him on, but one we might have to take, I think.
Well, we do have after this game, we do have a 4-day break, I believe. Is it even shorter than that because of the late game? I don't know. We've got 4 days. 4 days between the next game, so we will talk about that when we talk about the changes for next week. This game, we got the win. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to go back. Got a few housekeeping things. If you're listening to the show live, join us in our chat room, dmland.com/podcast. We have got quite a few people listening live, so get in there. You can ask us questions, or just make comments, and we'll read out ones as we go along. If you're listening to this at a later time, subscribe to the show. You can receive updates when a new show drops, and leave us a favourable review. Helps more people find us. Follow us on Facebook, Facebook/Demonland, as Facebook.com/Demonland31, on Twitter @Demonland, on Instagram @Demonland31, YouTube, just search for Demonland Podcast, or just join us at Demonland.com, create an account, and you can talk about the Ds 24/7. And now, this game. How was it having two proper ruckmen for once? What did you guys think of Big Prusie's game? Two ruckmen, yay or nay, Grapeviney?
Well, certainly for the first part of the game, it was a big, big yay, because he really set us up in that first quarter. A couple of big goals. Seemed to obviously, hurt his shoulder, and perhaps came out of the game a little bit later, but was still making a contest late, which was impressive given those restrictions. So, look, it was a yay first up. I'm not 100% sold on the two ruckman idea yet. I think it'll work in certain circumstances, but not a bad first hit out.
Super Mikado?
Well, I was all for it, but I think the elephant in the room when it comes to later in the season is when the rains come and the grounds start getting heavier, that how you're going to play both of them and McDonald. If you had a second ruckman who was also, and you were short on forwards, but I can't see a situation where we're going to play Gawn, Bruce, McDonald and Wiedemann all in the same team when the grounds start getting heavier later in the year. But for now, and this is why I really wanted Bruce in earlier in the season, because I thought you may as well, if you can ever play them all, you may as well play them all when conditions are dry. But I thought he was great. Look, he was obviously out for a lot of the second quarter, and I think any time they kicked the ball more than about 2 or 3 metres to his left or right, he was in substantial trouble. So there were a lot of shots cut off, but he did anchor one of the better intercept defenders in the league.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
To the spot and hold him there, which I thought was really good, and probably a bit hard to understand why Sydney persisted with that. But also, what I would say is he created 2 goals from forward 50 stoppages, and I would be interested to know how many we got last year from anyone not called Max Gawn. And that's something I've been saying all year, that the benefit of the second ruckman is that Wiedemann and McDonald kind of give a contest, but in the forward 50, and I always say that it is easy to be a centre bounce ruckman. I saw James Harms get a hit out as a centre bounce ruckman last year. Anyone can do that. The art is in not just tapping the thing, but tapping it to someone. And that is even more of an art in the forward 50 or the defensive 50, much less around the ground, where you've got everyone standing around the ball. And I think that's something that we saw the other night, especially with that goal that Brayshaw got right at the end, where Bruce has basically made the contest that's just knocked everyone out of the way to open the space for him. That's what we weren't getting last year. So again, I concur with Great Viney that I don't know if it's going to last all year, but I certainly thought it worked very well the other night.
The coach was asked a question after the game whether we would persist with it, and he said yes. I mean, look, he's not going to give away his game plan, but it looks like for the moment he'll be in the team. Yeah, he took Alir sort of out of the game. It forced Sydney to play a guy like Alir on him, and it sort of curbed his influence on the game. So for me, that was a win. I would have liked to have seen Bruce in the team from round one to at least give it a try. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but he's in now. So for the moment, I'm happy for him to keep playing. Moving on, Jayden Hunt has been a success up forward, 5 goals in the last 2 weeks. Great Viney, happy with that move, or would you like to see him play back on the wing or on the half back?
Look, happy with it for the moment. I was a sceptic about him going up forward, but look, he's delivered the goals, so it's hard to argue. It's good to see. I really hope it's a boost to his confidence. Because a fit and firing Jayden Hunt, I think, is a good player. So whether his future is up forward, I'm not 100% sure, but there's got to be a spot for him somewhere in that team. So, yeah, very happy to see him back in good form.
Super Mercado, Jayden Hunt.
Should have happened from round one, and I think it would have happened from round one if it wasn't for Lewis's late withdrawal in the first game that necessitated them throwing Hunt back, where I don't think he's really shown much in this year or last year. He has a couple of sort of turbo runs out of the back line, but yeah, that's all good. But I would rather Salem kicking the ball out of the back line than Hunt running it out. And I think he's shown a lot forward. He's a very accurate set shot, which is another cog in a very accurate collection of set shot kickers if you add Wiedemann and McDonald to that as well. So I think at the moment it's a very, very welcome spot, and I'm more than happy to keep him up front rather than doing something like rushing Garlett back into the side just to get the recognised small forward. I think the chase he put on the Swans bloke out of the 50
that was great.
Almost mowed him down, but at the very least caused him to flub the kick. That was probably better forward pressure than we've seen for a long time. So I'm more than happy for him to keep his spot at the moment.
Sometimes just those ones, all right, he didn't nail him and get the dropping the ball, but he did put him off the kick, and sometimes that's enough. That's doing enough, and also just having that pressure. So great to see, because we haven't had a lot of forward pressure players. So it's good to see. You mentioned both Tom McDonald and Wiedemann. Both of them still not asserting their dominance into games. I think Tom McDonald had a lot more possessions this week. I think he had 16. He took 6 marks, kicked a goal. Wiedemann, less possessions. I think he only had 9 and kicked a goal. I mean, he's got a beautiful kick for goal, Wiedemann. But, and I think he laid a great tackle or a good bump. But, I'm sort of waiting for both of those players to make an impact on the game, and I don't think they have so far.
Yeah, I think, well, you're right. T-Mac certainly hasn't returned to the form of last year yet, and Wiedemann, look, is always going to be a developing prospect in spite of the breakout against Geelong last year. So, look, it's the absence. It's also the absence of Jesse Hogan in there. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah, I noticed Tom sort of played up the field a little bit. Did a few things up the ground. So that's sort of like what Jesse would do. So, yeah, hopefully he can start. Both of them can start taking some marks in the forward 50 and kicking those goals. Super Mercado?
I think with Wiedemann, the thing is, whenever he gets the ball, he does something good with it.
Yes.
And what we saw in that last month of the last season, probably until the prelim, so 4 of the last 5 weeks, was that he was getting 15 and sometimes up to 20 touches in a game. and doing a lot of really good stuff with it. So as long as they can get the ball into his hands, I'm pretty confident that he's going to be a really good player. Where I get concerned again is that I don't think all season we're going to be able to play Bruce, McDonald and Wiedemann in the same forward line. So it's just going to be a case of who squeezes who out later in the season. And I guess you've always got that option with Tom to put him back into defence. And let me tell you, during that second quarter last week, I was screaming for him to go back into defence because they looked extremely shaky. But they put it together and they kept it together for the rest of the game and kind of, I don't know, almost suckered me into staying with the same defence for next week. But at least with him, there's the option. Whereas with Wiedemann, there's really no other option, and with Bruce, there's really no other option, except in the very dangerous scenario of Gawn not being there at all. So I think they can all play, but it may, if McDonald doesn't start kicking goals, might end in him being the one who gets squeezed out of the forward line.
Petrarca, I think he's had a much better the last 2 weeks. He's had some good outings. He's starting to hit his straps. What I noticed, what I enjoy, besides the fact that he kicked 2 goals, I think he had 6 tackles as well. So he's starting to get there. He's not quite having those breakout games that we've been waiting for, but certainly playing much better. What do you think, Grapeviney?
Yeah, I'm not one of those who's waiting for the breakout game. I just want consistent, good form, and I think that's what most people would agree on. And building as the season progresses, and really good signs the other night.
Kicked 2 beautiful goals. He's got a beautiful kick on the run. I just wish, I don't know whether his set shots, it's just a confidence thing, but so I don't know why he has such a beautiful kick for goal when he's running and sort of free, as opposed to when he's having that set shot. I don't know what the answer is there. Super Mercado?
I think the difference this week was they played him further up the ground. Again, potentially the introduction of Bruce allowed us to free Petrarca up to play more as a half forward than as a forward. So I thought he was really good. And I thought, the tackles, even the last couple of weeks, even the Essendon game, I think he had about 7 tackles. So there's certainly no question on the intent. It's just the execution. But I thought he was one of our best players on the night.
Maxi was dominant in the midfield, particularly I think at half time. I think we had. Did you remember what the stat was? The hitouts? It was 20 or 30 to 2 or something.
Yeah, it was a massive advantage in our favour. But for I think the first quarter, the hitouts to advantage were not particularly good.
Yes, so we had.
No one was getting on the end of them.
He had the massive stat, but we weren't. I think our clearances were almost identical. That was a bit worrying. I mean, how worried were you guys just before sort of halftime, before Jonesy sort of went wild? Were you worried? Because I thought they should have been a lot further up. They missed a lot of easy goals. So I think when they were 22 points up, I think they probably could have been 36 points up. Had a good lead on us. So I don't know. Were you guys worried?
I was more resigned to the end of the season. So I'm very glad that they managed to pull it out of the fire, because I did think to myself, we are actually playing well, but we've put ourselves in a situation where even if we get screwed by the umpires at the end or make a stupid decision and lose the game, that's basically going to be the season out the door. So I always hate it when we have to dig out of those really deep holes, because it leaves you with less room for error. Unfortunately, in this case, it came off. Most times when you go more than 4 goals down, it doesn't come off. But I would say I was upset, but it was more a resignation of that's the end of the season. So I'm really glad they managed to get it together. And it was really good to see Jonesy, who's copped some pretty unfair criticism, I reckon, this year, be the one to spark the team.
Yeah, it was fantastic. That sort of return. He kicked some beautiful goals, a very captain type stuff. great to see him back in form and also giving it to his brother as well. Because I think for most of Jonesy's career and playing against his brother, I think his brother's had the wood. Well, certainly his team's had the wood on him, so it's great to see him get that one back.
Yeah, really important goals at an important time. So stuck it up the doubters and rightly got. I think he ended up with a 9 votes. So coaches' votes. So he and Max were joint best on ground in the eyes of the coaches. George on the outers asked, did we play better because it was at the SCG and thus less exposed on the outside? I think the answer to that will probably come
Next
Saturday
week.
afternoon.
Exactly.
When we return to the G. I haven't checked the weather, but St Kilda can run. They've exposed us that way before, so let's see what happens on the weekend, I think, before we make the call on that one.
Or the team might need to move to Sydney or Supermercado to your favourite ground.
Fortress shithole.
Yes. I'm just having a look at what the weather forecast is for Saturday. Are we playing Saturday? Yes, Saturday. Yep. It's 27 degrees and sunny, so it's a nice.
Last time we had a game in those conditions, we had a good first 20 minutes and then went missing.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Mind you, that's saying the last time we played St Kilda, we had a good 20 minutes and then went missing. So
that's true.
Things to work on.
Exactly true. Billy Stretch, what did you think of his game, Supermercado? I'll start with you. Did he do enough to remain in the team?
Yep, I would say absolutely. Like, it wasn't a spectacular performance by any stretch of the imagination, but I think if you compare him to, say, what College Jasny had been doing, and it's not a knock on College Jasny, because I think he's still, coming back to health as well. But I thought he was much safer and I just thought he was much more composed, and it was good to see him kick on after he got thwarted after his best game of his career last year.
Great, Viney. Thoughts on Stretch?
I'm going to pass on this one. I found it very difficult to watch the game from my vantage point behind the goals, one level up among what do you call a nest of Swan supporters who basically weren't watching the game and were talking throughout it. So, and we were sort of closed in too. So you only had limited vision. And, it was difficult for me to see what was going on, particularly down the other end, I've got to say.
Were you at the chairman's function?
I was at the chairman's function. I met our president. I met our CEO. I didn't get anything out of either of them, so I've got nothing to offer in that regard.
You didn't organise an interview with Demoland? That's very poor.
No. I was a bit taken by surprise, so I didn't think of that, to be honest.
So you were in their chairman's functions and you ended up sitting behind the goals. Can't their chairman get some good seats?
That's the Sydney vibe for you. They're not too fussed about the game. It's all about drinking it's a night out, basically. So I did get singled out, actually, in the chairman's address. As being one of the few Melbourne supporters in the room, because I did have my scarf on, so at least I was flying the flag.
Great.
If not observing the game.
I thought it was a bit optimistic putting a Thursday night game on in Sydney. It did seem to be a lesser crowd than they would normally get at the SCG. I think it looks like Adelaide's probably the best place for these Thursday night games, but I guess they can't do them there every single week. But it did seem... there was a lot less people there than there would normally be for a Swans game.
I'm not sorry, Andy.
You go. I just couldn't tell whether the crowd was poor because Sydney hadn't had such a good start to the year, and therefore supporters weren't coming out, or whether it was because it was a Thursday night in Sydney and they don't care.
No, I think the Thursday night makes a difference. I went with friends who've got a young child and. It was touch and go for them because it's a school night. So I think it makes it really difficult for families with little kids, and it makes it really difficult for those that are living sort of outside the city, basically, because it ends up being a very late night.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think we've got another Thursday game this week, don't we? So the AFL is really keen on them, but
I think
Yeah, I
I
don't
think
like
they did
them.
it last year. I think the first in the first 6-7 weeks. Don't
Yeah.
quote me on that.
Yep.
They had the Thursdays, and then they stopped, and then there was a couple littered throughout the year here
Yep.
and there,
That's right.
but not many. As it was mostly at the beginning of the year, and it's the same this year. I haven't looked too far ahead. I don't think we've got another one this year. I think we've only got one more Friday night game for the rest of the year. Super Mikado, you might know that better off the top of your head.
No, I just all I know is that it's all about the broadcaster, which is in a way fair enough because they're the guys writing the $1 billion plus check to show the game. But yeah, it's really they don't care what the crowd is. To be honest, as long as there's enough people there that it's not embarrassing.
Yeah.
I think the AFL's happy enough that the broadcasters are loving it on the Thursday night and getting good ratings. Versus, as long as there's enough people in the ground that it's not laughable, they don't care.
We have 2 Friday night games to go. We've got West Coast in round 9 over there, and then we've got Sydney later on in the year at the MCG. But having a look at the, I didn't realise this, and maybe I did when the draw came out, but round 8 and round 9, we're travelling 2 weeks in a row. We've got Gold Coast and then Perth. So thank you, AFL, for that.
And don't forget the round 23 clash in Hobart.
Yes.
Now, just when it's all on the line, let's go to a ground
right.
that has Casey Field style winds.
Yeah. Against a team that knows how to play those winds.
Exactly. Well, that's good luck to North for selling games to a place where they can actually benefit from it, as opposed to us who sells games to places where you wreck the team for a week after as well.
Yeah, now we've got a caller on the line. Good evening. Who am I talking to?
Good evening. Talking to Binman.
Binman, how are you? Thank goodness you did call in because I couldn't. I don't think I could sleep tonight if I didn't know that we had Binman, good luck charm, calling in. How are you?
A very relieved Melbourne fan, that is for sure. I can't recall. I don't think I've barracked Melbourne for more than 40 years, and I don't recall ever a round 4 game with so much tension. I was just so, like, that whole sort of dynamic, if we lose this, our chances of, forget top 4, was such a critical game, and I was really stressed at half time. After that, I felt that we looked a better team, and I was really impressed actually how we held the ball in that last quarter. We didn't need to kick away, but we were quite mature in the way I thought that we maintained possession and didn't really let them get close. But geez, I was stressed in the lead up to half time.
Oh, definitely. Anyone else? Anything that we've talked about tonight stand out? Any of the players we've spoken about, or any other players you want to talk about? Or
there's actually been a few comments that I've sort of nodded my head. I think Grapevine's comment. I really think we miss Hogan a lot. Like, I've got a lot of time for Wiedemann, but he didn't impact the game much. And interestingly, I thought his best patch was when Bruce went off with the shoulder injury at the end of the first and into the second, where he got a run in the ruck. But prior to that, he really doesn't impact the game in the way Hogan does. He doesn't get possessions. But as you pointed out, his kicking is fantastic. And that free kick was there. And I thought the umpiring to be, last week we were critical. This week they were terrific. There were 1 or 2. But I thought makes such a difference to a game of footy when the umpiring's good. He got that free kick, and I was so confident he was going to kick that. And it was a critical time because they were pushing, and it just gave us that cushion. So I think that's a huge thing for a forward. I thought the Wagners played well.
Yep.
That gut running is really, I mentioned last week, the critical issue is our gut running across. So footy's in a really interesting space at the moment with all this discussion about the 2 styles. And Melbourne are definitely in the chaos style, but you need to run and cover, and that's why they're in the team. So, I thought there was a couple of other examples where we sat outside the contest. There's goals that Jones and Viney also got a really important goal.
Yep.
Both of the times I was sitting outside the contest where previously we've all gone into the contest. So, I thought a good coaching effort by Goodwood.
What did you think? And also the other boys, if you want to chime in. Marty Hore Had quite a bit of the ball, but there are a lot of people on Demonland have been critical of his disposal. I didn't think it was terrible, and I thought he took a few sort of good marks in defence. I think he had 9 all up, 20 possessions all up. I thought it was a good game.
Oh, he was terrific, I thought. I mean, in the first half, I was tearing my hair. I was going bananas at our kicking. I mean, Tom McDonald was a classic. Talk about putting him back. He'll drive people bananas. He goes back. He missed Jones. It was just one of those 30-metre less, 25-minute chip kicks to Jones. Missed it and missed Jones by a metre, and it went out of bounds. That was symbolic of how we were playing. And to be honest, Hore missed a couple as well. But his reading of the flight of the ball and his intercept mark is what we've really lacked. That's what, people talk about. I get a bit frustrated with this discussion about us needing to be one-on-one. I put on Demonland a little while ago that, Goodwin's got a style, it's an intercept style, it's a zone defence. That's the approach he's taken. And Hore filled that gap that a player like we brought in Lever for specifically that role, not to play one-on-one. I mean, we saw how poor Lever is one-on-one. And I thought Hore's reading of the ball was terrific and a really big factor in the win, actually.
What did you guys think of Frosty on Buddy? I thought he was good, but I wasn't sure if Buddy is a bit out of, I don't know if he's just out of form. I don't know. He looked maybe even a little bit overweight, looked a bit chunky in his jumper. Is this a case of him not training? I remember hearing a report last year. What do you guys think of Frosty?
I think if you go back and look at our game and don't watch the whole thing because you'll go mad, the last time we played Sydney at the MCG last year, it was pretty much identical to that. I thought he did very well in keeping him up the ground where Franklin was forced to try and launch, 50, 60-metre bombs all the time, except for that one goal he got from inside 50 where it basically fell into his arms. He did very well to keep Frost away, but effectively the mark fell into his arms.
Yep.
And the same thing last year. This year, he kicked, 2-4 last year and he kicked 1-3 this year. I think Frost did a really good job on him in a horses for courses style way. I'm not sure that's going to translate this week against St Kilda's less high profile, but let's say more committed to training forward line. I'm not sure it's going to translate again, but I think it's a perfect matchup for Frost in this team.
We'll talk about it later, but that Bruce and Membry, they always have a day out against us for some reason. They're the Kent Kingsleys. They're our Kent Kingsleys. B-Man, are you there? I wasn't sure if you got disconnected.
Oh, no, I was there. And I concur with Super McCart. Geez, he did his job, didn't he? I think the thing for, it's a good point, you kicked 1-4 or something the last time we played it to kick 1-3. The game would have been different. He'd kicked 4-1, for instance. He's a fantastic player, fit or not. And I thought Frost did a manful job. He was on him. He rode him hard all game. And I think it's also a good point. He's a really good matchup for him because he's, he can go with him on that lead. He could stay with him. And he's really about the only player in our team who's strong enough to, May notwithstanding, but May's not in the team, strong enough to even try to go one-on-one against Franklin. So
now, poor Oscar McDonald cops it a lot on Demonland. He copped it again this week. What's his role going to be going forward, particularly with May coming back and Lever coming back into the team? Prior to this year, I would have thought, from the coach's perspective, Oscar was one of the first picked every week, but I don't know if his form is going to warrant it, but I also know that the coaching staff love him. I can't see him being dropped, but do you guys have thoughts on that?
I think he's being written off too soon by too many.
Yeah.
He's got a solid body of work behind him, Oscar. And yes, he hasn't had a great start to the year, as most of the back line hasn't. But, I'm not selling my shares in him just yet.
Yep, no, fair enough.
And I think at the moment, unless you throw Tom McDonald back, then is really, I don't know. I don't see a situation potentially this week where St Kilda don't have that massive array of tall forwards. They've got a couple of sort of medium to tall forwards who always seem to stitch us up. But if any there's going to be a week, this could be the week to give him a rest or send him back to the twos to try and get some confidence, because he looked, when I think it was Heaney took that mark on him in the second quarter, he looked like he wanted the ground to open up and swallow him, which is not a complete, you can't write it off at the SCG because the way it looked. But I think the problem is, when May and Lever come back, he's not playing.
I disagree. He will play. And that was really interesting, that Heaney mark, because who was the other person in that contest? Do you recall?
Was it Fritsch? I can't remember, but
that's right.
Yeah.
People won't remember. People remember Oscar because they have this visceral reaction to him. It wasn't his man. We've been cut up in the last 3 weeks by small forwards. His man was Reid. His man got one mark inside 50 and kicked 1 point. Compare that to, of course, Franklin is a much better player than Reid. But he did his job. He didn't get massive possessions. He went off at three-quarter time with concussion. But his backman role is a one-on-one ruckman player. He's not an intercept marker. He's too slow for that. And he gave Reid, who was their other key forward, who needed to fire for them to win that game, he gave him a bath. And that's what the coaches will look at. And so, you toss it up and down and say, why they keep picking him. They keep picking him, I can only assume, because he does what he's been asked to do and does it relatively well. Grapevine is correct. He hasn't had a fantastic start to the season, but unlike others, he also had postseason surgery. Everyone else seems to get that's an excuse that gets trotted out, but not for him.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And D. Zephyr just commented in the chat room that it was Wagner who failed to keep Heaney away from Oscar in that contest.
But who cops it? Oscar cops it.
Yeah, because he's the
There's no doubt.
But he did have a tell in this case. The look on his face was like, it's like when a player has that look on their face where they think they've given away a free kick and then it turns out they haven't. It was, it didn't look initially like his fault, but the look on his face, I can see why people automatically went to it being his fault, because he just looked like, oh, Jesus, I'm going to cop shit for this one as well. And I think that's a position when a player gets to that level, that's when someone hopefully is putting an arm around him somewhere and giving him the exact same kind of pep talk that Bin Man you just gave to highlight what he's doing well and to encourage him, for the love of God, not to search for his own name on Twitter and see what people are writing about him.
Yeah, I think if you're an AFL footballer, I don't think you should be searching for your name on Twitter.
But they do. They do. Believe me, it's not my, but I know people, many a person who's, gone for a bit of a snarky comment about an opposition player and they've chipped in, or they've got a passive aggressive like of their tweet from that player. Phil Davis, you know who you are. I know several of our players a few years back were, even during the depths of the Great Depression era, were very keen on searching their own names, which just seems insane to me. I think there's a TV show where it said social media is like opening a door to a room where everyone's telling you how shit you are, and I think that should be the first lesson players get when they join the club.
Now, I think we may have lost both of our other co-hosts, Super Mercado. I can see.
Oh, that sound suggests.
Because we also lost connection to our live stream, and that is because it's my Telstra. I'll blame them. My home internet. I've got you on my phone, so it's going through the 4G on Telstra. So I'm just going to tether up my phone to my computer so we can get the live stream back, and we can get our co-hosts back on the line.
You need the emergency tape to play at this time. I was in the car a couple of weeks ago driving home, and might have been the Hawthorn North Melbourne game, and I was listening to the Triple M coverage, and as the last quarter started, it died. It went straight into the music. They started playing 1979 by the Smashing Pumpkins in a none more Triple M fashion. And I kept turning back every couple of minutes just to see, like, surely they fixed this by now. And it was about 10 minutes into the quarter by the time that someone actually found, how whatever had happened to actually fix it. So I think you should have the same thing. You should just have that tape ready to roll when it cuts off.
Well, I think what actually happens. It goes back with the way it's set up. We've got it will go back to when the show's not on. It plays all of our interviews that I've got lined up. So the stream would have kicked onto that. But now I think our stream is back. We're back online. I'll get Grapeviney. I'll just turn down the Skype sounds. I'll see if I can get Bin Man back if he wants to keep contributing, and we can keep going. And I might even delete this I might even keep it in there, delete it out of the thing, so no one will know what happened. G'day, Bin Man, welcome back. It wasn't you, it was my internet connection. I'm now tethering off my phone. Let's see how that holds up with 3 different connections. Have we got Grapeviney back?
Back on deck.
Back on deck. And Big Man, you are there?
I am, and are you sure it wasn't to do with me being cut off when I was starting to get a bit animated about Oscar McDonald?
No, it definitely wasn't. It was definitely had to do with. I wouldn't do that to you. I'm not going to censor you. We are back. I'm going to blame my this. They're doing the NBN in my area. We haven't switched over to NBN, but while they've been doing this thing, it's just almost every day there's internet outages. It's just an absolute cock up, and I'm not actually looking forward to. I've just heard. Is any of you guys on the NBN? Because I've just heard horror stories about it.
Oh, I am. I'm on the fibre, whatever the good one is, and it started in the first few months was absolutely terrible. But they seem to have got their act together now, and there's not as many random speed drops where it just goes from maximum speed to 1998 speed at the drop of a hat. So good luck with that.
Well, I'm dreading it because we've got cable here, and I don't want to let it go. I've got a good thing going, so I don't know why I have to change over, but apparently I do. Not looking forward to it. Anything else from the game? B-Man, anything else that stood out for you want to bring up for our listeners? And I think I've lost him again.
Oh no, we haven't. He hasn't tripped the Oscar McDonald file again.
Yeah, all right. Well, that might be on his end because I've still got Grapeviney here. Grapeviney, anything else from this game?
No, I think that covers it. Good to see Clayton Oliver. Clayton Oliver's playing well.
Yeah,
he's had a good start to the season.
33 possessions, not bad at all. Very good.
Can we talk about great first goals for the Melbourne Football Club?
Bruce.
Yeah,
wasn't it? I mean, I think he just kicked it and hoped, but It's a goal, and that's and actually, so Petrarca was nominated. I think we just lost Bin Man there. If he does want to call back, he's welcome to do so. Petrarca was nominated for Goal of the Year, but I thought Bruce's was a much better goal.
And it had that element of ruck work again in the forward 50 where he saw it dropping short and burnt off. To be fair, he wasn't playing against a ruckman. No. He wasn't contesting against a ruckman. But he read it perfectly, and then, like you say, he just threw it on the boot and hoped for the best. But gee whiz, I'm trying to think back to a few great first goals. The first one I ever remember in my supporting life was Andrew Lamperl.
Yep, first kick, first goal
with his first kick from the pocket, and in a game where I've never seen that again. So I would love if that's on someone's VHS or something like that. I'd love them to pull that goal out. So we can get another look at it because it can't be half as spectacular as I remember it being.
I was just putting Andrew Lamperl into Google to see if that comes up. But
no doubt, it's Demon Wiki and about 97 mentions of his goal on my blog.
There's that can't be Andrew Lamperl on debut. This is a Brisbane Lions Twitter. Why would that be on that? It's got here, surely a contender for the... Oh, no, someone's It must be you replying to it.
Yep.
Brisbane said, Brisbane is surely a contender for best first AFL goal. So you must have replied saying, surely Andrew Lamprell, but I can't find it. That was in the description on Google.
This I've got to see. I can't see why I'd be just writing comments to the Brisbane Lions, but any excuse to talk up Andrew Lamprell.
Fantastic. Oh no, it wasn't you. It was someone else saying Andrew
There you go.
Lamprell on
There's
debut
more than
for
one
Melbourne
of
was
us.
the best. Yes, so there you go. All right, so but we'll move on. We wrapped that we're no longer on the bottom of the ladder. Wasn't nice to open up the paper or look online and see the ladder and see us on the bottom. It's not a nice feeling. So it's nice to be off finally.
Thanks, Carlton.
Yes, and no, it was actually first. It was thanks to North Melbourne. Despite them getting the win, they didn't get the necessary percentage boost to overtake us. So, yes.
Well, it would have been an outrageous scenario to have after round 4, should Carlton have actually put someone back on the line, to have every single team in the comp having a win and a loss. I think everyone would have had a loss at this point as well, wouldn't they? It certainly would have been everyone having a win by round 4 is pretty rare these days. You usually get a few teams, often us, plough through 7 or 8 weeks before they have a win. And I guess we still can now, thanks to Carlton.
Well, there was that stat about not that common by round 4 to have every team having had a loss as well. So it also works the other way around.
Yeah, so it's, for all the ongoing whinging about there not being enough scoring, it is actually a very even competition.
Well, what do you think? They brought in this 666 to increase the scoring, and clearly, the results speak for themselves. Scoring is definitely down. So is that a failure by the AFL? So far from the random sample that we've got, because correct me if I'm wrong, the whole reason for 666 was to increase scoring or to reduce congestion and therefore increase the scoring.
But really to increase the scoring.
Yeah.
Look, I think from my perspective,
to increase the number of ads, basically.
I wonder how low the scores would be if they hadn't done it, considering how often goals have been scored out of the middle. But the thing is, if scoring is your ultimate goal in life, which to me it's not, how does having that at the bounce help when, if it breaks out of the middle, it goes forward, a guy marks it, kicks it back into the middle of the ground, then your 666 is over.
Yeah.
Unless someone scores from the immediate exit out of the centre, then what influence is it going to have? And to me, I was actually quite glad that that's how conservative they stayed in the end, because I didn't want them to do that. I didn't want them to do anything. I would just let it roll and see what happens in the future. But it was almost the reason I could handle it was I knew it wasn't going to make a big difference to the game, and it hasn't. And yeah, if the ultimate goal is scoring, and unfortunately it will be because that's what gets Channel 7 to put another 0 on the check, they're going to have to do something else. And I really hope it's not something that rips the fabric of the game up just for the sake of keeping some TV executives happy.
Yeah, there was someone on Demonland that suggested that that they have 666 for the entire game. Was that the grapevine? Was that the gist of it? Was that the gist of it? Was he sort of
someone who created about 10 threads in the space of of a few minutes? So I'm not sure. Look, I'm glad they haven't done that, and I'm with Clarko on this. Clarko, and he might have been dirty after their loss on the weekend, but we're making these rule changes every single year, and the people who are making them have got no idea how they're going to play out. And we're tinkering with a very good product, and it hasn't increased scoring. And look, I'm in the camp that the footy this year hasn't really been all that flash. There hasn't been a game that's stood out. To me, I've watched most games, most weekends. Apparently the Essendon Brisbane game on the weekend was good to watch. I didn't see it, but I haven't enjoyed watching the footy this year. As sort of a neutral watching other games. So I don't think it's working, no.
It's time to bring back the rush behind.
Yeah, I saw you mentioned that on Twitter. So what are you saying that the ones where it's taken over by a player?
Just let them kick it through from 40 metres out if they want, like someone did one day. I think it was one of our players did it one day. I reckon it was the Kevin Sheedy last game that we lost at the end. And I reckon it was Nathan Brown, just got it from like 30 metres and just thumped it through for a point. Now that you're letting people exit the 50 easier, if a team wants to drop a point and gamble that's going to help them get the quick exit that allows them to bounce down the ground in 3 goes and go out the back, as they say, let them do it. That takes out one adjudication that people and umpires have to decide, deliberate or not deliberate. It takes out one thing for fans to sook about for the cost of what? A guy whacks a point through. Who cares? That's a free point for the total score. And it's a team basically gambling. It adds that extra tactical level on it of, do we want to concede the point and set up and go again, versus the game getting bogged down in the back pocket by people gathering the ball, and because they can't rush it, they just get tackled on the boundary, and then we have a throw, and then the ball gets stuck down there for 5 minutes. I reckon you've got to put some control in to avoid that situation that got it banned in the first place, where the guy was just playing on and turning around and rushing behinds. So something like, it's got to touch it's got to touch another player first before it gets rushed, or something like that. So there's got to be some kind of control. But at the same time, if teams want to concede points these days, if the idea is for them to kick goals, I think a lot of teams probably would do that to get that set up and then just go bang straight down the other end to kick goals.
What do you think about if they have a rule change where kicking backwards is to play on? Would you be open to that, or?
Well, I wouldn't, put my head in the oven over that. Like, it wouldn't be as bad as the full ground 666, which is just one of the worst ideas in history. Like, imagine the ball just like bouncing
and you can't
towards a forward who's stuck behind the Marcel
line.
Marceau, fake wall, and can't walk outside the 50 with the ball just sitting a foot away from him. It's the stupidest thing of all time. So if you said to me, a kick backwards is play on, I could handle that, but I still think that it's not going to save the game. If there's a mystical version of the game that we're all supposed to be aiming for, that's not going to save it. And quite frankly, I don't think anything is going to save it. Like, people have got this fetish that footy used to be better at some time in the past, but no one can quite pinpoint exactly what that time is. Some people think it was the 70s. Some people think it was the 80s. Some people think it was the 90s. And I don't know how now there's any chance of going back to that. So I personally would rather have as few regulations as possible, and just wear the fact that not every game's going to be a classic. Finish aside, no one could possibly have gone into Gold Coast Carlton expecting that it was going to be an exciting game of football. There's going to be shit games. And that's probably the reason why people thought the 70s, the 80s, the 90s were awesome, because in the 80s, you weren't watching Fitzroy versus Melbourne in its entirety on a Saturday afternoon in front of your television. Unless you were there, you were seeing 5 minutes of highlights maybe. Whereas now you can watch every single game. So you sit down and watch 9 games a week, you're going to see crap games. Sure, there might be more crap games than you would want there to be, but I think it's just a natural thing that you're just not going to get entertained all the time. And I would prefer to see, like I said, as less regulations as possible, and let the game evolve.
Big Man says he likes the idea of a play on when kicking backwards, but only in the defensive 50-metre arc. Yep, I can see that, but
again, that's not so radical that it would stuff things up. But at the same time, I don't think it's gonna really help. And even then, arguably, does that stuff up switching? which is something that gets the ball back into space versus just, okay, if I'm got a guy across the ground, but I'm worried about kicking it to him, now I'm just going to kick it down the line and we're going to end up with the stacks on for the next 10 minutes anyway. So that's the thing. Everything they do is like pulling one lever that has like a mysterious effect on another lever that they can't quite, even it out so that we get to where we want to go.
They just need to stop pulling the levers. I mean,
Correct.
it's ridiculous.
And unpull some levers, put some levers back to their original position.
Do you think they'll ever go back to the non-666, or do you think they're just too, it's not narcissistic to think that that's not the right word, but that they can't have been wrong. They don't want to have been seen to have been wrong to ever go back to it. Do you think they'll go back to it, or they
Not
won't
immediately, and I hope that they don't. Let it sit for a while, whether it's, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then if it really is an issue and scoring's dropped off significantly and is staying low, then perhaps look at stripping it, taking it away again.
But, I don't think the 666 is the reason why the scoring's lower this year. Because, like I said, if look at the Carlton game, so you had, 8 goals apiece, let's say, and then 4 quarters. You only had 20 centre bounces for the game. So you can't blame the fact that it was a 58, 56 game on a rule that only occurs 20 times a game and for, say, 200 seconds a game, 10 seconds either side of a centre bounce. I don't think the 666 has had any impact, except if anything, it's probably had a positive impact because you have got those goals where teams are just pinging straight out of the centre. So like I said before, God knows how low the scoring would be if they hadn't done it. But unfortunately, it's not good enough that it's going to satisfy them, and we're going to get some other rubbish at the end of this year.
I don't like those goals taken straight out of the centre, and when I watch them, I get the feeling that it's been artificially created by this rule change. And look, it's meant to be advantageous to our side, but we haven't seen that happen yet. But it looks to I don't like that.
I agree. It's like it used to be a thrilling scenario when someone actually did do that, and now you kind of feel it's just. You're right. It is artificial. It's just like they're just trying too hard to be what the broadcaster wants them to be. And again, the broadcaster writes a enormous check. Like the broadcaster spends about $1.2 billion more than I do on the game. So I understand where they're going from. But unfortunately, we're just going to be set for this for years to come because I would like obviously Channel 7. They want goals. That's all they want. They wouldn't care if it was a basketball shootout where it was just goal, 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 goal. But I don't think the fans would want that. There would be a certain point where the fans are going to go, oh, this is bullshit. Like, whatever happened to defence? So you're going to get that balance where it's great for Channel 7 that they can play ads. But if it gets too ridiculous, there'll be a few weeks or a couple of years where people go, this is awesome. The game's 140 to 130 every week. But after that, people will just start to lose interest in it because it's so ridiculous. So it's what is the sweet spot? And that's what I'd like them to identify. What are we actually trying to do? Give me the mission statement of telling me what all these changes are supposed to do, because it seems to me everything they do, it's like the sub rule. At one point, the sub rule was to bust congestion, and then it was to stop teams being disadvantaged when they lost a player. But they couldn't even articulate what the reason for doing the change was. So I would just like them to tell me as a fan, what does a good game of football look like? And then let me judge any changes they make based on that to how that's going to their vision of what a good game looks like.
Well, a good game for me is us winning the grand final.
Correct.
150-0. So
I would win. I'd like to win a grand final 15-14. Like, to me, it doesn't care. But I guess that's the problem, because people will generally be happy to watch their own team play any old crap. But the problem is now, unlike 1976, you're not just watching your own team. You're watching everybody, and it depends. Like a Friday night where everyone just turns off at half time. and then Channel 7 get the ratings and see the ratings go through the toilet. I would love to see the quarter hour or the half hour ratings on last Friday night. I looked up and it was 8-2 dead late in the first quarter, and thought, oh Christ, this is going to have people changing the rules at half time. But that's the problem. Like, they have to prop those games up, and that's where potentially it could end up as a floating fixture in the future, where they're the trade-off to not completely stuffing up the game and bringing in stupid things like full ground 666 is that the broadcaster gets to pick with 6 weeks or a month's notice or whatever what their Friday night game is, and then they can decide who's going to provide the best spectacle and the best audience, and that's the trade-off we get for not doing anything completely stupid and outrageous that totally busts the game.
That's coming. That they do that roving fixture, or whatever they call it, rolling fixture in the NRL, I believe.
I think they might have stopped it now, but yeah, they may still do it, but they certainly did it for a while, which was hardly popular with fans. But that's also the league that's playing 6 o'clock Friday night games. So I think if anyone's more interested in the TV than the people at the ground, it's certainly the NRL.
This Friday they've got. Is it this Friday? Yeah, this Friday they got 2 games on. They got the earlier game, 4:20, North Melbourne, Essendon, and then the Eagles Port after that.
Well, they've certainly gotten over their concerns about
Easter,
Good Friday
Good
quickly.
Friday. Playing 2 games now.
Yeah, it's like it's just going to become like ANZAC Day, where it's just a commodity to sell ratings and to sell ads. Which again, I say this every single time. I understand why they have to do it. The alternative is you go back to a game where you've got part-time players, working in a fish and chip shop until 4 o'clock, then getting in their car and driving to training twice a week, maybe. And to me, it doesn't bother me, because if you took the same league, and no offense to the players, did that, what does that matter to me? I don't care. As a fan, I'm still watching my team play. But if people think the standard is not good enough now, imagine what it'd look like then.
Yep. Well, we'll move on. Any of you boys? Were we on TV this week with Casey? No. So I didn't see anything. I read the scores at the end. Grapeviney, do you know anything about Casey and who played well for the D's? Well, I know one person, and you'll probably say the same person, Jeffy Garlett.
A welcome return to form. It's been a long time coming. So, I didn't see it or follow, but like you, I just relied on the reports from a few Demonlanders. So, yeah, good news.
Have we got, so Jeffy, I think he had 3 goals, and I think what the good thing was his defensive game. I believe he had quite a few tackles, which I'm sure the coach would have sort of outlined to him that he needs to do. Anyone else?
Is it enough to, does he come back in on the back of one good game?
No way. Can I just chip in? North Melbourne has a rancid VFL team. Remember, they kicked no goals against Casey last year in a game. Yep. So he has got to do this against better opposition, and I'm not sure who they're playing this week. The way the VFL goes, there's probably 3 weeks of buys and a state game coming up. But he's got to do it consistently. There's no way I'm bringing him back in on one good performance against a horrible team.
Well, we may as well start talking changes now. Look, if they were considering him to come in, who would they get rid of to bring him in? That's where you got to sort of look at.
And is Jay Lockhart ready to come back? And is Jay ahead of him? Because
he
Jay
was ahead of him.
Showed all the right signs in his games, and as Super Mikado pointed out, Jeffy's had a lot of strikes before this one hit. So, he's been in pretty ordinary form for a long time, and it's good to see him back among the tackles and the goals. But, perhaps he needs to needs to put a few more runs on the board before putting his name before the selection.
And I'm very keen to have him back in that team and playing. And look, I thought Spargo did a good enough job. Did some very nice things. And again, he's kind of like Wiedemann. He seems to do nice things when you get the ball in his hands, but he just doesn't get the ball in his hands often enough. But I would be perfectly happy for him to take that spot. Hunt, if that doesn't work, perfectly happy to take that spot. But I just don't want to be rushing people back in to the squad on the back of one great performance against a really bad team. Like, I'm not sure who Casey plays this week, but I'm hoping it's one of the better teams. And then we can decide how worthwhile that form was against North.
From all reports, Nibbler didn't set the world on fire with his game. That's got to be disappointing for him for trying to get back into the team.
Yep, he'll need to wait his turn, I reckon.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. So changes. I guess it depends. Doesn't look like we've got. So it depends what Jetta had knee soreness. That's why he was out of the game. So I guess it depends whether he's back from that. Lockhart, apparently he did his back doing up his shoelaces at training. Sort of had a back spasm. That's why he missed out. So I guess it depends whether they, Spargo he could replace, or we don't know. It depends whether he's back. Other than that,
and if Jetta comes back, does he replace Hore or Wagner?
Well, that's It's one of those two, I think.
I thought Hore did a really good Jetta, played a really good Jetta game.
Yeah.
He was taking on blokes bigger than him. He was chipping him for a few intercept marks. So it's just sort of a shame that it's good that if Jetta comes back, and who knows if he will, given that we've got a 4-day turnaround coming after it. But it was kind of a shame that it's like, you'd love to keep them both, but are we going to be able to play them both? I would prefer, say, to keep Hore and to take Wagner out. But I'm not sure if that if Hore will do as well, playing the different role.
You mentioned the 4-day break. Do we pick the team this week with that in mind, that we have the 4 days coming up, so that you might rest Neville for another week so that he's fresh come ANZAC Eve? Or do you just go pick your best team?
If Hore hadn't done so well, I'd say no. But given that he did, I'm actually tempted to. Even though I do not want to take St Kilda lightly, especially given they've been a much better side than we have so far this year. I don't want to do that, but because I think it's almost like you need to win. We need to win.
Yeah.
We need to win here and then go into the Richmond game a chance, rather than try to play for the Richmond game, lose here, and then go into that being desperate to win.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that we take St Kilda lightly. I was just got to sort of keep that in mind as well, because it is a very short turnaround, and it's a short turnaround for Richmond as well. Yep. I think they've got 4 days as well. So
they're the game after us, you'll be pleased to know. So we've actually got a
little bit of extra time.
A 2-hour break on them.
Are you concerned, looking at the injury list, are you concerned that both Joel Smith and Aaron Vandenberg have been 4 to 6 weeks for the last 4 to 6 weeks?
Yes.
And now May's 2 to 4 still.
Yeah, well, no, May last week was 2 to 3. He's now 2 to 4. So he's blown out. He's actually blown out a week. Instead of being 1 to 3, he's now 2 to 4. So
I reckon this is the injury list is actually the biggest news of the week for mine. And the real concern is Aaron Vandenberg, who from the start of the season we've known was always going to be 4 to 6. He had a run last week and pulled up sore. So, as much as it pains me to say it, his long-term prospects must be in serious doubt.
He's never going to get He's never going to get the body right.
Just doesn't look like his body's going to give him the chance to.
Every year, this has happened every year, and I'll add, Joel Smith is exactly the same every year, and sometimes it's been the collarbone or whatever. Obviously that's not a soft tissue injury, but he seems to be always out for chunks at a time.
Well, I think the first injury he had last year, or in his first year as well, was the same thing. That was from a an impact injury.
Yeah, that was
and then one
Rewald
last year as well.
falling on
So
him.
this is sort of his first tissue injury, as they say. So hopefully this is the first and last one, but it's making our leaving him on in that JLT game look even worse. Like we're still waiting for a WikiLeaks style revelation of whether that was what's caused his future issues or whether it's just a coincidence. But it doesn't look good off the bat.
I mean, it's amazing if you try to sort of think back to that time and you imagine what the coaches, what the medical staff were thinking to themselves, and it's hard to imagine them sort of saying or concluding, well, look, he's going to be out for the better part of 3 months. We might as well just play him for the rest of this practice match. So
even that's ludicrous.
We don't know the medical and the science behind it, but it seems bizarre in hindsight.
Yeah, I think it was more like probably a case of he's a bit sore, but we got a couple of weeks before round one. May as well leave him out there. And he did bloody well for someone who was as it's turned out, bloody half crippled. He did very well. So I would really like to see him as a forward again with full fitness.
Well, with Stephen May, 2 to 4 weeks, he's out still for a while. Missing this week, missing Richmond, will likely miss Hawthorn. I'm not sure who we play after that, but looks like he won't be back for a while.
Yep, came back on after he was injured.
Yep, that's true. Who do we have after that? That's when we play. We've got two games on the road, Gold Coast and West Coast. So looks like he won't be back until earliest Hawthorn, latest Gold Coast or West Coast.
I hope he's back for the Gold Coast game, given that Mitch Clark never got to play against Brisbane or Fremantle, and Lever's never got to play against Adelaide. We're really missing the opportunity.
Lever did play against Adelaide.
But not in front of their home.
Not in Adelaide.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. We've never had the chance to see if someone else can pull off the same spectacular carnival of comedy that we did about Scully.
Well, Gold Coast are laughing all the way to the bank at the moment, and had Richmond lost, they'd be sitting 2 games ahead of both May's Demons and Lynch's Tigers. But
it certainly hasn't worked out for us so far. But we've got a couple of years in May yet to hopefully get that right.
Yeah, I think so. Are you boys worried about the Saints at all? They've had a great start to the year. Had they kicked an extra goal against Freo, they'd be sitting on top of the ladder. No one would have predicted that at the beginning of the year. So, having said that, are you worried about the Saints, particularly because they almost ended our season last year as well?
Not worried any more than I am about any other side. So, as I say, it'll be interesting to see how we go back on the G this week, and particularly in the hot weather, and whether we can run. So, it's not a game we can take lightly.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I'm no more scared than I usually am. And you got to remember, last year, they're obviously a better side than they were last year, but we smashed them for the first 15, 20 minutes of that game. I think we were 3 goals to nothing up. Yep. Probably should have been further up. So, there's not... we're not running in fear of them, but there were things in that game last year that surely the coaches will have addressed. And look, I'm more confident that we can look after them this year. I was very confident we could look after them last year, and look what happened. But I'm confident that we should win. But I'm not taking anything for granted this season.
Neither am I. Boys, anything else? Yes, I did want to mention the club released the ANZAC Day guernsey, and with it they released a video of the Melbourne legend Ronald Dale Barassi Jr. opening up the box that contained the Guernsey with the number 31 on the back at Grapevine. Was quite a stirring video and quite an emotional one from Ron. An emotional reaction.
Yes, well, it's personal for Ron, given his father, of course. And if you're interested in the history of that, it's worth chasing down a copy of the letter that the Melbourne Football Club wrote to Ron's mother after his dad's death, and just pledging how they're going to look after the young boy. That's particularly moving, but you're right, the video is moving, and I actually like the design of the jumper. It's very simple. It's only got the ANZAC logo on the chest and the names of those Melbourne Football Club players who were killed in action on the back, and I like it. I think it's simple and classy.
It's got a bit of a mix between the Clash Guernsey and the normal one as well.
There's a hint of disco jumper about it.
Make the name stand out.
Yeah.
Look, I think the jumper looks good, apart from that sort of weird disco bit down the bottom. But as you know, I love that. And the general concept of it is really good. But I just think it really gets a bit tacky, the selling of the jumpers. And I'm very much hoping that the proceeds do go somewhere, somewhere appropriate. But it's just, I don't know, it just feels tacky. I think we do a good job just being involved. But all these commemorative jumpers and, just go straight into the shop and go for sale, it just feels really tacky to me. Like, I think the players should be wearing that ANZAC logo. I don't think I should just be able to go to the store and buy a jumper with that on it.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a good point.
Are you just referring just to the ANZAC one because of the significance of ANZAC Day, or are you talking about all?
Well, I mean, look, the Indigenous ones and all that. I think that's obviously, again, I'm not going to go down to the shop and buy an Indigenous jumper. I'm more than happy. Again, I'm hoping that at least some of the proceeds from selling that jumper go to, a good cause. But, it's a slippery slope to where you end up like North Melbourne, where they, bring out a new jumper for every day that ends in a Y. And it's just a shameless cash grab. And we're not at that stage yet. We seem to do more the commemorative jumpers, although there was that one, was it last year or the year before, where they basically sold everyone, you could pay to put your name on the jumper that they wore. I reckon it was the Collingwood round 23 fiasco. Or no, it was actually, it was the end of last year. It was GWS last year, right?
Yeah,
I knew it was an MCG game at the end of last year. Like they're the ones that are really like, oh God, like I know we have to make money, but it just really doesn't sit well with me to be doing that, because like I said, you end up like North, where it's basically a joke, where they're just bringing out a new jumper every 2 days. But I just think from this one, I've just looked at the email they sent. It does say proceeds from each sale will be donated to the RSL's ANZAC appeal, which is good. But I still just don't feel comfortable with that being sold in a shop.
How many proceeds go to the RSL?
Exactly. Proceeds. If it was the profit above the cost of making it on each one, fair enough. I mean, they're $130.
I think the other thing,
they're selling them in extra small, medium, large, extra large, 2 extra large, 3 extra large, 4 extra large. So they're not going to sell out of them, because that's a huge range of things to sell. So,
just to follow on with your point, it'd be nice if that for that one Guernsey for the year, no sponsors logos.
Yep.
Have the AFL logo on one side and the ANZAC logo on the other. That's
it.
I
would agree with that.
So
and then the problem being, of course, old mate Zurich, they'll be like, well, we've paid however much money, millions of dollars, and but it would be nice. I agree. It would be nice for them to do that, and then look after them another way. Find another way to get their name, buddy, all over the place for that week. But yeah, for this jumper, just to have a very simple jumper. And again, I know what you're saying, that they've done the design so that you can see the names better on the back of the jumper. But I just think wear the standard jumper. like especially Melbourne, Richmond, just wear the standard jumper and, like you say, put the ANZAC logo over where the sponsor would be. And look, I don't think there's a necessity. You don't need to put the names on the back of the jumper. Like, these people should be like held up as heroes, like held up for everything they've done. Like, it's not a knock on them, but I just don't think it's necessary to put it on the back of a jumper like that's a step above in our commemoration. It just seems to be reaching for me. I would rather see the normal jumper and the stories of these men told in every form of media we've got, so that it is a case of lest we forget, but we don't need to put it on the jumper.
Yeah. Do all the teams in that round of ANZAC Day, they don't all have the ANZAC Day logo? It's probably just the ANZAC Eve and Collingwood, Essendon. Yep. Do Richmond don't do a jumper for? I don't believe in the games we've played. They do?
I think they do, yeah.
Okay.
I think all 4 clubs do.
Yeah, and that's just to me
ANZAC,
like, well,
but
so what if you play 2 days later, you don't put the names on the back of the jumper? Like, we're not playing on ANZAC Day, and I don't think it would make any difference if you were. I just don't think that's a necessary step to make. But okay, so if we play on the Sunday, we don't do this jumper, and then that's not a bad thing. Like, I don't see why, just because you play in the ANZAC Day game, you need to go to this sort of, it just seems to be stretching too far. Like, I know it's all done in the best possible taste, apart from possibly the selling of them, and it's all done for the right reasons. But it just almost, it's like, feels like in England how the bloke that didn't want to wear a poppy on his shirt on Remembrance Day got bloody harassed by all and sundry because he wouldn't wear the poppy. It just feels like it's doing it just in case someone gets upset that you don't do it.
Yeah.
And now my car will probably blow up in my driveway tomorrow morning, but I'm sticking with it.
Boys, anything else before we wrap it up?
Not from me. I'll be heading into hiding now.
Yeah, you're. Yes, well,
controversial statements. Podcast host makes contentious statements on ANZAC jumper.
We can erase it from the broadcast if you want. Super. Where can people find you? Not.
Well, if they want to harass me, they've got another couple of weeks to do it at my current location. Well, one thing I'll say on demonwiki.org, we actually have got quite a comprehensive list of players that served during war, and it's not just the players that we all know about from the fact that they paid the ultimate price. I've actually done a lot of work over the last couple of years in conjunction with a lot of the other amateur club historians in finding the people who just served during war as well and getting them into a list too. So I might actually, for the occasion, put that link up on the main page of the Demon Wiki, and I might drop it into the chat room as well, because I think it's really important to not just concentrate on the people who paid the ultimate price, but to celebrate the many, many players that served pretty much in every conflict from the Boer War to the Korean War. We've had players connected to the Melbourne Football Club who have served in them. So I'll get that link up in the chat room as well. Very nice. All right, boys.
Good idea.
Yeah, excellent idea. If you want to start a thread on Demonland about it as well, you're welcome to do that. I think that's a very interesting topic, and those people deserve, the highest recognition. All right, boys. It's been lovely reminiscing about actually a good thing for once. I almost had forgotten what it was like to win. We hadn't had a win since the final last year, the semi-final last year.
We were on about a 6-game losing streak.
So, no, we're obviously including JLT, which for us means a lot. But, yeah, great to get a win, and hopefully we can be back next week talking about another victory. So, thank you, boys. Thank you, Super Mikado. Thank you, Great Viney, and thank you to Big Man who called in. And we'll see you next week. Go Days.